This is Emeritus News Channel.
Well, it's pretty clear that the Obama administration and my colleagues in Congress are going to continue on their march to shove this government-run health care plan down the throats of the American people. You can't add a couple of Republican sprinkles on the top of a 2,700-page bill and claim that it's bipartisan. And the fact is, it looks like they are going to move ahead. During the 20 years I've been in Congress, I've always found it pretty remarkable to watch the Congress try to pass something that the American people have already said no to. They should scrap this bill, start over. I thought we had a good conversation last Thursday. There probably are 8 or 10 things that we could agree on to make our current health care system more affordable for more Americans.
Good morning. Today there are some reports indicating that Democrats have put some type of deadline in place, and that is a 2-week deadline to get their health care bill passed. The question that raises in my mind is, if they don't meet their deadline, because obviously they've not met any of their deadlines thus far on this, can the American people then expect Washington to focus on the real issue, which is jobs in this economy? And so we'll be working very hard to make sure that we do focus on that primary issue that is affecting so many Americans right now, is how we regain our economic footing in this country.
Thank you. I'm Shelley Moore Capito from West Virginia, and I want to thank Eric for bringing the topic that I wanted to talk about, that I think really most Americans are interested in, and that's job and the rising unemployment and the difficulty finding a job. My state of West Virginia in the middle or the spring of last year had around a 6.3% unemployment. At the beginning of this week, our employment was up to 10.5%. That is a staggering job loss in our state, and it's concerning a lot of our communities and our families. And the policies of the Obama administration and the Speaker Pelosi's majority here in the House are directly attributable to the job loss that we're suffering in my state and in our region. You've got cap-and-trade looming legislation out there that's job-killing propositions for states such as mine. But you also have now this EPA finding of endangerment that is going to come in and very heavy-handedly punish states that are reliant on fossil fuels and have large industrial complexes or manufacturing sectors. That's going to result in even more job loss. And my question is, if the consideration, I would think, at the very top level of our government, our president, should be looking at all of the regulatory procedures that he's put into place and the legislative procedures, and say to themselves, how is this going to affect the jobs and the economy of our country? And I don't believe that's the first priority that I'm seeing, certainly not out of the EPA in our region of the country, and certainly not out of the legislation, whether it be energy legislation or the health legislation that we're going to be seeing later.
Marsha Blackburn from Tennessee. On the Democrats' continued push to push through a health care bill and the expanded Medicaid, let me just remind you of one thing. In Tennessee, we rolled the dice on this over a decade ago, and we gambled that these near-term accelerated expenses would yield a long-term savings. Well, the savings were never realized in Tennessee. You had continued expenses. And what we also know is when they tried the expanded Medicaid in Massachusetts, savings never came. In Maine, the savings never came. This is a bill that is too expensive to afford. It is something that will restrict access to health care, and it will cause us to continue to lose jobs in this country.
Since the town halls of last August and the streets of Massachusetts, the American people have spoken loud and clear. They don't want a government takeover of health care. And they don't want a government takeover of health care with a few Republican ideas sprinkled on top for good measure. The reality is today, on process and on policy, this administration and this Congress are choosing to ignore the will of the majority of the American people and continue to drive a government takeover of health care. House Republicans believe it's time to listen to the American people. This nation knows we need health care reform that lowers the cost of health insurance without growing the size of government. House Republicans believe, as many here and others that attended the summit said last week, the American people want us to scrap the bill, start over with a clean sheet of paper, and focus on reducing the burden and the cost of health insurance for working families, small businesses, and family farms. The President's new way forward today is not the way the American people want to go on health care. But Republicans stand ready to resist any effort at Obamacare 2.0, but work in good faith to start from scratch and build a health care reform bill that will really meet the desires of the overwhelming majority of this country.